Young people on television can be terrifying. If it isn't programmes like Ladette to Lady, leaving us speechless with the scariest tantrums imaginable...
Will you s*** off?
Hi, you guys, that smells just like pot.
It's fearless Anne Widdecombe being dispatched to estates to expose the horrors of young hoodies.
Hi, guys.
For over 50 years, television has provided a means for young people and adults to observe each other with growing incomprehension. This is the story of TV's schizophrenic relationship with the teenager. The latest show, simultaneously delighting young viewers while scaring their mums and dads, is Skins. Featuring a bunch of drugged-up, partying, serial-shagging adolescents, Skins is a full-throttle teenage joyride. The teen audience is notoriously hard to please. An authentic portrayal is what matters.
Young people do, from my experience, spend a lot of time, going out and drinking underage and doing all those sort of things, which I found. So when I read it, I did find it quite believable. I didn't read it and think, blimey, is that what's going on? I read it and I thought, oh yeah, and that's maybe why it didn't stand out to me as particularly shocking or terrible.
We do show sex and drugs, but that's because teenagers indulge in sex and take drugs. I know I did. Well, not so much sex, but a fair few drugs, yeah.
Skins is more than sex, drugs and swearing. It's so much more than that.
Of course, there's another reason that teenagers like Skins.
I mean, Anthea, what is he doing?
I think that lock's messed up again. I put the drill under the sink.
It shows their parents as idiots.
You take me for a complete James Blunt, don't you?
The grown-ups in Skins are the teenagers, and the people that struggle most with life are the most feckless, the most out of control of their own lives are the adults.
Do you want to know?
I want to piss.
Jim, I was just wondering, do you have to swear all the time?
We see teenagers as ridiculously stereotyped individuals with no redeeming features, so why can't they see us the same way?
Oh, sodding bollocky shit. Where is the twat?
For all its audience credibility, Skins comes up against the problem youth TV has always faced. Watching television isn't the only thing teenagers could be doing.
If you guys want to waste your life watching television...
No, you don't watch television, Chris.
No, I don't watch television, right? You brain dead. Can you not think of anything better to do to entertain yourselves with?
Like
pills.
So, how did we get to all this pill-popping, beer-spewing and bed-hopping? Back in the mid-1950s, television producers had already decided that teens were trouble. They were determined to expose their evil ways.
So much has been said about teenagers recently that I must admit I flinch at stepping on this well-trodden ground again. I certainly am not going to attempt to reach any profound conclusion. All that we hope to do is to observe a new type of teenager.
I think most adults just think that teenagers are uncouth and rude. We're just a bunch of kids out for kicks.
Early documentaries on youth culture often discussed young people almost as if they were the other. They were like a tribe, they were anthropological, they were there to be understood in their rituals, their behaviours.
Girls are the #1 topic of conversation. And then, of course, there's clothes, appearance. They call men who wear conventional clothes peasants.
Well, frankly, I don't know what to say. The boys got me worried.
#2, you start on the caption, keep screwed up high.
Vision and sound are on.
TV had already set about demonising teenagers, but the uptight men in suits soon realised they were a problem that wouldn't go away. This was not a generation that was going to sit and watch what their parents were watching.
As soon as teenagers were defined, there was a sense in which they had to also be reached.
TV producers didn't really know what to make of teenagers. I mean, there was something that obviously they hadn't seen before, and of course most TV producers and TV executives in the 50s, they were particular kinds of people, you know, they were kind of Oxbridge-educated men in suits. They hadn't been teenagers themselves, of course, because there hadn't been the concept before.
One of television's first fumbling attempts to reach teenagers was 1959's Jukebox Jury, hosted by a man who'd clearly left his youth well behind him.
Good evening and welcome once again to another session of Jukebox Jury.
There were no spring chickens on the panel either. It was their job to pass judgment on the latest pop records. They were occasionally joined by token teenager Susan Stranks, who was plucked from posh stage school RADA for the task.
I was a teenager, just to give the young a voice. I think the idea was that it shouldn't just be older people judging the music that they didn't necessarily really understand.
Soft brown eyes that see.
Lovely party music for dancing. So I think it'll be a hit.
And I think youthful appeal is something which has to be reckoned with when it comes to hits and misses.
This is great. I think it's wonderful. They say that it's going to be a...
There was a bell, I think it was, if it was a hit, and the klaxon if it was a miss. It was terribly formal now I look back, and compared with the shows now, which are all singing, all dancing, brightly coloured, moving about, people don't sit behind desks anymore for that kind of thing.
All right. Flashing about with the lights there. On we go to the next one.
It is incredible anybody ever watched it. But I remember in the youth clubs, you know, we used to have our own jukebox jury. I mean, it was the thing to do. It was the way you heard new music.
In the 60s, Britain became cool. Teenagers had more money to spend than ever before. They flocked to London's Carnaby Street boutiques to snap up the latest fashions and dance to the latest music. In 1963, youth television started to feel young too. From the opening titles to its legendary presenter, Cathy McGowan, ITV pop show Ready Steady Go buzzed with energy.
And now our next group have gone rather folky on their new record, and it's called What Have They Done to the Rain, and here are The Searchers.
I would not go out anywhere till I watched Ready Steady Go.
Baby, can I take you home? Baby, let me take you home. I love you all my life.
Bands like The Animals may have worn suits, but they epitomised Ready Steady Go's exuberant appeal.
First thing you did for the first hour when you met anybody was talk about Ready Steady Go, because they would have always had the coolest of acts. Everything that was new they had on there. There was no pretense about it. It really was in your face.
Well, our next group are great friends of mine, and they've changed their style on the next disc, and it's really great, and it's called Baby I Need Your Lovin', and here are the Formo.
Cathy McGowan was a 60s icon. She got the job after seeing an ad for The Voice of the Teenager. She instantly became a fashion phenomenon, modelling for magazines and living the 60s dream.
So that record's absolutely superb, and here's another one that I've been playing all week, and I think it's absolutely gorgeous.
Cathy McGowan was the first superstar teenager in the sense that she was the first ordinary teenager who became a celebrity through national television. She wore very fashionable clothes. She was obviously kind of in tune with the music and all the trends of the time. And the saying went that what Cathy McGowan wore, you know, one week, the next week, kids wearing, wherever you lived in Britain, kids were copying her look.
Well, each week we like to have a special look at fashion, so we'll kick off that way this week. First of all, hairstyles. They are long, as always. And then hand styles, lots and lots of rings.
We all wore the same clothes, all the same haircuts, the same trousers, the same jeans. And it's incredible that that's where we're back to now. Now, that probably was the first time that had ever happened. And I think that Ready Steady Go did that. It brought the boutique lifestyle to your television on a Friday night. And you know what? The shops in Coventry very quickly learnt to watch that programme, because if they didn't, they wouldn't sell clothes.
if you were in any way cool and you aspired to be a mod, if you hadn't watched Ready Steady Go, and if you hadn't aspired to be in the audience there wearing your kind of all-part pack-a-mac or whatever, then you weren't anybody.
Cathy McGowan retired from the limelight when Ready Steady Go ended in 1966 and now lives quietly with her partner, singer Michael Ball. Coming up, if Ready Steady Go was a window on 60s teen lifestyle, programmes like Grange Hill and The Tube would show young people in a way that started to scare their parents. Television for teenagers has always trodden a difficult path, trying to please them without upsetting their parents. Television craves a young audience, but rarely understands it. And in the mid-60s, this gulf between young and old became apparent for all to see. Whilst Ready Steady Go was depicting a carefree young lifestyle, the reality on the streets and the beaches was much grittier.
People were terrified about youth crime. There was a huge panic about teenage delinquency, kids in leather jackets lurking on street corners, you know, stabbing old ladies. I mean, obviously, by our standards, it's hugely inflated because crime was much less. But there was a real anxiety about kids.
It was quite a salutary time, I think, for parents, because it was the first time the teenager having emerged that a gap started widening between parents and children that was talked about in the press.
With teenagers and adults viewing each other with growing mistrust, the BBC decided to gather the family round the TV with a carefully controlled pop show.
Yes, it's number one. It's Top of the Pops.
That became the family Thursday night viewing, because it was like your dad wanted to watch Pan's People with nothing on, and he wouldn't get told off by my mum because he was only watching Top of the Pops.
It was as much for the parents, even if it was just for them to complain, as it was for the teenagers, and there was no real separation, I don't think. You know, it wasn't like the teenagers were being put in, as of yet, their own ghetto where they would be watching the programmes without their parents. That hadn't yet really happened.
We've got a great sound coming up just now, and it's a group called the Brotherhood of Man.
There's nowhere in the world that I would rather be than with you, my love.
Top of the Pops was strictly sanitised, safe for family consumption, and went on to become the longest-running music show on television.
You talk to somebody who was 18 in 1967 or something, they're not waxing lyrical about all these fabulous programmes. Oh, do you remember this, do you remember that? Because TV wasn't really made for them in those days.
Throughout the 1970s, teenagers were fed a diet of healthy television, designed to keep them in line. Nothing that might overexcite them or help them with their growing pains. The cosy consensus was broken in 1978. A drama set in a bog-standard comprehensive school, Grange Hill.
Grange Hill is the programme that takes that age group between, let's say, 10 and 20, and it makes a programme that is about them, that is played by them, that is recognisable, it's familiar, and it actually transcends the form completely.
Look there, Nick. Oh, what are we going to do now? What's with the we? It's your boyfriend?
Well, we can't just leave him here, Tommy. Someone's bound to find him.
And what are we supposed to do with him?
I don't know, but I know one thing. He can't go to registration like that, can he?
You'd think that running home to watch a television programme about school after being at school for 8 hours on that day is a bit like a busman's holiday. But I think it just turned the corner.
Rookies!
In adult drama, you know, we have shows set in police stations, shows set in hospitals. So to have a show set in a school that did speak your language, and really accurately as well, was a dream.
Grange Hill really tried to address the issues that it thought faced young people at a bog-standard comprehensive school. And it did it in detail, and it treated the characters as real people who were entitled to complex and difficult views on the world which weren't necessarily good or bad.
I found this last night.
Well, I can't see what I can do about it.
That's the trouble with your sword, isn't it? You never can.
What's up with Smiler? Who, me or him?
Well, both.
He found a beer can in the third-year common.
Gasp, shock, horror. The end of civilization as we know it.
Grange Hill was very good at just simply cranking up real life. So it would take social problems, whether they were to do with bullying or whether they're to do with drugs or whether they're to do with tension within the family, and they would just simply exaggerate.
Look out! Oh, watch your owl.
Script editors such as Anthony Minghella pushed controversial storylines about out-of-control kids, bullies and drug addicts. Shocked parents jammed the BBC switchboard with complaints. But it helped some teenagers deal with the kind of issues they'd never dream of telling mum or dad.
He's gone the other way.
On reflection, 30 years later, people have said in certain situations that it really helped them back then.
Having used drama to drag teenage issues out of the playground, the BBC decided to take it a step further. Their community programme unit came up with a brave idea. It would hand over a programme to young people, while of course still being carefully monitored by the grown-ups.
We all felt that teenagers should produce their own show with the help of the TV professionals.
So that's exactly what happened.
The result was 1978's Something Else. It was presented by a group of earnest teenagers who seemed strangely middle-aged. They included a miserable young man in a tweed jacket, worrying that he didn't fit in.
According to all that I see on television, I should be confident, tall, beefy, sexy, good at sums and carpentry. I should drink vast amounts of beer and have money invested in a building society. I'm a failure.
And a miserable young woman singing a song about not fitting in.
When I come to London, I feel a bit distressed because it seems rather impersonal and unfriendly. I've written a song which seems relevant to that.
Something Else was like the essence of what is wrong with the idea of making youth television, because once you signpost it and fence it off, it's exactly what, as a young person, you don't want to watch. You don't want to go to it because you just feel patronised.
This is the part of the programme the television people call the payoff. In other words, it's the thank you and good night bit. We hope we've managed to give you something else, and something a bit more like the kind of television we all want to see.
There's always been this kind of tension about, if you do something especially for us, we'll resist it. If you tell us how to behave, we'll not behave like that. If you come with us from values or ideas or images that you think are specifically for us, we'll resent them.
At the end of the 70s, teenagers were on the rampage. For a decade, they'd been patronised by politicians. The little television targeted at the young still had an agenda that was set by the old.
The young kids of today, they're frustrated and bored. They're sick of being pushed around.
Over the last 12 months, punk rock has become almost a battle cry in British society. For many people, it's a bigger threat to our way of life than Russian communism or hyperinflation.
I don't like punk rock myself, and I don't feel I have to explain that or apologise for it.
It was time for a youth rebellion. Parents threw up their hands in horror at this thing called punk, but kids revelled in the sheer chaos and sense of power. Television was reluctant to get involved.
From now on, you'll be watching fantastic Tube.
Until in 1982, that raw, unrehearsed punk attitude finally made its presence felt. It was a music show that spoke to young people in a language the grown-ups didn't want to hear.
The Tube was just a very brave effort to throw a hand grenade among that area of programming that desperately needed it. Music was kind of dying then. Punk gave it a real shot in the arm, and the Tube was television's rather late response to punk.
The Jam appeared on the first night of the Tube, encapsulating the disaffected attitude of the show's young audience.
the idea of the do-it-yourself, the idea of things can be live, things can be just done, people can be the same age as you, speaking in this kind of language that is the same language that you used yourself, the idea that the bands were relatively unknown, that you go from one thing to another, and if accidents happened, well, hey, keep them in, don't try and edit them out.
The legendary Iggy Pop!
Godfather of American punk, Iggy Pop, made a rare appearance on the Tube and perfectly represented the show's raw spirit.
Anarchy was just built in because that's the way things were then, and we genuinely didn't know what we were doing, and half the time we were panicking on a live show that was on every Friday for an hour and a half. And it was quite often born out of desperation, accident and happenstance.
Nasty. Quick, I've done my bit of paper.
Can I tell the audience where you've got your foot?
No, because I have to have my foot propped up, otherwise my dress gets funny. I know, well, if you get a bit lippy, I'll give you a quick poke. Yeah.
You know, Paula being very informal and flirting, it changed youth television to some extent because it actually allowed television to sort of try and break down the normal barriers which television has had till then.
There's a new as yet unsigned band from Liverpool. They're called Frankie Goes to Hollywood, and Jules went to Liverpool to be encouraged by them.
There were no concessions to family viewing. The Tube put on a sexually provocative band who were unlikely to give your dad the same thrill as Pan's People. Frankie were banned on the BBC. The Tube courted controversy until it was taken off air in 1987, after presenter Jules Holland accidentally used the F word in a trail. It caused outrage, but it was only the beginning.
It's really opened the doors for young-minded people of all ages to get stuck into a bit of anarchy and to throw the television rule book out the window and to kind of reinvent it.
From the outset, older TV executives had tried to keep a tight rein on teenage television with shows like Jukebox Jury and Top of the Pops. The arrival of pop video culture in the 80s changed the dynamic. Scared of being left behind, Channel 4 were the first to give up control with Network 7. They allowed a team of novice young programme makers to produce a show as far removed from something else as is possible to imagine. Network 7 was a channel within a channel concept. It had its own factual, news and entertainment features. Every element was delivered by and targeted at a single generation.
We don't want presenters. You know, we do not want people who are just going to be given a script, stand up and just say it. They have to find the ideas, they have to research them, they have to come up with an approach, they have to do everything.
My name's Magenta. This is my pink gossip caravan. I think I'm going to call it Fifi. And this is where all the really hot stuff on the show happens, believe me.
So you had a group of kind of 21-year-olds who'd never made television before, and they thought, right, whatever I think, we're going to put it on television, and that's what's going to fill the 2 hours.
People didn't realise the extent to which we were making it up as we went. You know, we were literally flying by the seat of our pants.
Also in the programme, we're going to be asking why Cleo Rokas doesn't fall over. But before we get to all that, we're going to be delving into the world of stockings.
Network 7 assumed its audience had a short attention span. It offered journalism for the MTV generation.
A bunch of caravans and portakabins turned upside down, customised with bags of televisions in fishing nets and exploded television in the corner. Television never really been made in that way before.
The speed of it was very, very important because we were talking to a generation, remember, who was used to MTV, who were, you know, computers, where everything was fast. And so, you know, we had to make it fast in order to engage their attention.
It is like an addiction. But while a smoker can say no to a cigarette, a bulimic can't live without food.
Fact
fact is fun, I think was one of our mantras. Fact is fun. And, you know, why couldn't you put music behind information? Why couldn't you use big graphics to explain things?
As the fascinating facts flew, there were secret rules in place to ensure Network 7 stayed fashionable.
There was a rule book on the programme. Nobody over the age of 30.
Nobody with beards.
We didn't want anyone on who was too ugly.
Absolutely, there were mantras there to try and make sure that people who appeared on the screen were people you actually wanted to watch.
Well, this is terribly pretty, but I'm afraid it won't be much use to me, as it's obviously been made for someone a little less well-endowed than I am.
The style and attitude of Network 7 was revolutionary inside TV.
The main influence of Network 7 was on the industry, and you might say that thereafter it had a kind of quite long trajectory through to influencing the audience.
I think it had a massive, massive influence, which, you know, continues today.
For all its groundbreaking style, Network 7 had a worthy mission to inform and entertain. But by the end of the 80s, this ethos was to change. After the break, The Word tears up youth TV's rulebook and gives us a glimpse into the future of television.
I'll do anything to be on TV.
TV has relentlessly pursued a young audience with little idea of what they really want. In the 1980s, programmes finally began to reflect a youthful attitude.
And a show that's set to put the cult back into culture.
The team behind Network 7 were keen for another hit. They decided that what young Britain needed, a Met-centric lesson in the contemporary arts. Club X.
It was pointless, poncy rubbish. I think it, without question, has to be one of the worst programmes ever made.
Tonight we have Baby Falls and their new single, Pacific and Chaos Art. Also we have Test Department, plus the audience get a chance to write their own play. Also,
I've searched the entire English dictionary from A to Z, and there isn't really a word to capture the detritus of Club X. It was just simply shit.
All right, well, listen, what's the programme about? Let's check it and see. Okay.
Parsons, who was the editor, wasn't at all cowed, wasn't at all upset, wasn't frightened, far from it. He gritted his teeth, loved it, and kept doing it. But what's your impression of Power?
Well, I think mostly it's bad.
Power is bad. OK, well, then, those suggestions have to be incorporated. And the more people complained, the more he did it. And after a while, halfway through this series, you kind of understood what he was getting at, that sometimes a complete disaster is an amazing thing to watch.
What we're going to do is we're going to go over to this priestess over here.
Yeah.
I might throw you some questions from
Fine,
over there,
okay.
This is a priest. I'm going to blindfold this priest now, and we are going to do an experiment. So there's three.
It was an amazing area of richness which we were tapping into, and it was a great shame that we were never able to get the, if you like, the kudos that we probably deserved. But I think that's the way of things. Sometimes you're a little bit early, and I think that's what we were with Club X.
Constant technical failures coupled with a misguided editorial concept ensured that Club X was a short-lived experiment. The harsh lesson learned from Club X's failure was that British youth in the early 90s didn't want to be either educated or informed. They simply wanted to be entertained. Britain had record levels of youth unemployment and was in the longest recession for 50 years. The only thing teenagers craved was escapism. There'd been a dance music revolution, and ecstasy had changed youth culture. At last, one show understood that combining sheer anarchy and pure entertainment was the only way forward.
Welcome to The Word, and you won't believe this, but some critics sometimes say very unkind things about the presenters on this show. Sometimes they say we're completely lacking in any talent. Well, I'm going to nip that in the bud now.
it was the programme which redefined Friday night. Literally, 1 to 2 million people would stay in to watch The Word, or come back straight from the pub to watch The Word.
Listen, don't take any
This crowd
notes.
is completely out of control. They're insane.
That's a lynch mob.
It is a lynch mob, but they're so young. I forgot how the youth in Great Britain really looks. It's frightening.
Unlike any other youth TV programme, it was aimed at youth, as in 14 and 15-year-olds, you know, who were kind of a bit too young to go out.
James, do you know what's in store for you tonight?
Oh, I think so, yeah.
What do you think?
I think you're going to sit on my face now, aren't you?
Excuse me. He's wishing.
We're not going to be cooler than them. We're going to keep that glass on the TV screen between the viewer and the show as thin as possible, and we're not going to play the game.
I think he's going very quickly.
Anything could happen. You know, it was live. There was nothing else like it. Your parents certainly hated it.
Knickers. Who needs them? Well, some girls do and some girls don't. Bridget Nielsen does, but Saucy Sunita doesn't. She was snapped at a nightclub, enjoying a bit of fresh air. What about Ivana Trump? Is she or isn't she?
You could almost sense the disrespect for the whole medium that emanated from that programme.
Whoops, careless.
There was a real sense in making the word that you were undermining television itself.
We don't condone violence on this show, certainly not with studded guns.
Mechanism
Yeah?
to nasty questions.
All right, well, I'm going to ask you a lot of nasty questions, so that better be well filled up. I'm going to have a piss patch all over myself by the end of the show, aren't I?
Provocative interviews with its guests won the show its credibility.
Stop!
Hammer time!
In 1992, Word presenter Mark Lamar clearly demonstrated the show's uncompromising attitude when he accused Jamaican singer Shabba Ranks of homophobia.
But he's got freedom of speech, but his freedom of speech is saying go and shoot gay people. Surely that's wrong.
Well, most definitely right now, from a forfeit the law of God Almighty, you deserve crucifixion. Most definitely.
The whole point of interviewing somebody is to find out what sort of person is this. And often, you know, they're so desperate to portray an image, you've got to shift them out of the comfort zone to find out what they're really like. And we were the first TV show to really do that.
The Bible. I live by the concept of the Bible, which is the righteousness of every human being. And the Bible stated that man should multiply. The multiplication is done by a male and a female.
That's absolute crap, and you know it. You two go and sit up.
We wanted to make television which you would talk about, and television which gave you access and you could see stars in a way that you'd never seen them before.
When the big band came on, and it didn't matter who they were important for that moment and for that era, and so therefore there was a sense of event about it. And I think that was his single biggest innovation, is it brought the risk-taking of the live event back into television.
Everybody on that was doing what they thought was funny and doing what they enjoyed and putting things on television they thought they'd never seen before. And that was a real passion.
Welcome to the hopefuls, people who said they'd do anything to get on television.
One item on the Word was shocking, but this gross exhibitionism was a glimpse at the future of television.
I'll do anything to be on TV.
People who want to be on television sort of decide to be on television. What we didn't know when we were doing the Hopefuls was that actually it would generate a whole load of people who would make a career out of this. But it was undoubtedly giving power to people to be on television in a slightly less produced way than it had been conventionally.
People still talk about it, and they loved it. For whatever reasons, right or wrong, it was a mixture of the good and the bad. It took risks that you would never see in TV. It would, you know, sort of take you to the heights and plummet to the depths, all in the same 5 minutes often that show.
And here we have some beautiful arse waxing going on. How many bombs have you done this week? So you've had your face in people's arses all week?
All week.
And
we were genuinely reflecting and hopefully to some extent influencing the way people thought about the world. Probably reflective of the changing society in urban areas and influencing the areas miles away if you were watching it in some home in the country in Yorkshire. It was a sort of a window on the world which hadn't existed till then.
The Word was able to connect with a young audience like never before, but alarm bells were ringing with the grown-ups. In 1995, Channel 4 was issued with a formal warning by the ITC over serious breaches of taste and decency on the show. The Word's raucous, riotous vibe was totally in sync with the rise of the new lad and ladette culture in Britain. Reading loaded, drinking too much lager, and partying hard were now the norm. The gap between how teenagers saw themselves and how their parents saw them had never been wider. Programmes such as Ibiza Uncovered confirmed every parent's worst fears about what their children were up to on holiday.
What have you been up to while you've been out here?
Shagging and drinking.
She's been good, I've been very bad.
That's a coins on pocket. Girls, the girls are lovely.
The fundamental difference with Ibiza Uncovered is it was made by people who were the same age and of the same inclination of everybody on that island. So we naturally got that perspective.
He shagged an ugly bit only last night, and she were fat and ugly, weren't she?
And she thinks his money because she wrote the Scouser!
We were transmitting the show while we were still making it, and there was this great sense of people thinking, do you know what, I could be on that show. I could go to Ibiza, or I'm going to Ibiza next week, which was a new thing.
The new millennium saw the start of a backlash against the excesses of teenage culture. The anti-social behaviour order had been in place since 1998 and was starting to bite. As youth crime soared, the public were less interested in understanding the causes of delinquency and more interested in getting tough on young offenders. It was an echo of 40 years earlier, when the first teenagers on television were held up as a source of anxiety for grown-ups.
Right from the 50s onwards, there was a real anxiety about kids, and there was a real anxiety about delinquency and violence, you know, just as there is now. Same kinds of issues, same kinds of social panics.
4 decades later, nothing much has changed.
Hi guys.
Oh, don't want to know you.
Don't you?
No.
What about those old ladies down in the bingo hall?
Don't give two
Programmes such as Anne Widdecombe versus the Hoodies are still trying to work out how to deal with this worrying species.
Are you smoking cannabis?
Oh, you want cannabis?
Yeah, why are you doing that?
The buzz in it is so
nice.
good,
Nah, man, it's good for my lungs.
It's not at all good for your lungs. It's not good for your brains either.
Television's knee-jerk response to all this teenage delinquency was simple: punish them. Suddenly, the TV schedules filled up with shows such as Ladette to Lady, Brat Camp, and That'll Teach 'em. They paraded a selection of badly behaved kids, then remodelled them for adult entertainment. Whilst these programmes won viewers, they only offered a two-dimensional view of teenage life. Ladette to Lady rounded up the most delinquent girls it could find and carted them off to finishing school to learn some manners.
Come on! None of you have got any gumption. You're just pathetic.
I've got go with me.
No, you have
yes,
not.
I have got go with me.
Well, then why are you just so pathetic?
Don't call me pathetic then. Do I be rude to you?
Yes, you're being incredibly rude to me.
Don't be rude to me then.
Simone, I will see you later.
No, you won't. I'm going to hide from you.
Shows like Ladette to Lady are sort of reflecting perhaps this view that we have of our young people as needing to be fixed in some way, whereas perhaps it's not that they need to be fixed at all, it's just that they need to be given the options that we don't give them as a society, that we don't give them on TV, and unfortunately perhaps we're not giving them in real life.
Simone, you were the rudest person last night you could ever imagine.
No, listen. No, you listen to me a minute now. I'm up to you with you two.
Oh, excuse me.
Whenever I'm naughty, you see me. Whenever I'm good, you stop.
But you only get certain types of teenagers
or young people on those kind of shows. It's not really showing the whole picture.
Meanwhile, That'll Teach 'Em explored the idea that the education system was better in the old days, as it sent teenagers to a 1960s secondary modern for a taste of what previous generations had to endure.
Sarah, restrain yourself. Restrain yourself. Stand up straight, Roberts! You must respect the school rule.
All these programmes that feature people who are 16 to 24 are not for people who are 16 to 24, they're for adults. They're how adults view that strange species that is, that they've forgotten about.
Harvey's mischief has earned him a detention. Within 10 minutes, he's had enough and breaks down.
I don't like to see you distressed, but at the same time, if your current state of mind means that you're less likely to do something like that again, then we move forward, don't we?
They just really reflect the kind of insecurities and the worries and concerns of an audience that's kind of around 40.
The TV teen bashing went to another level on 2004's Brat Camp.
Shut up, Mum, I'm not doing it!
They banished them to a remote boot camp in the middle of an American desert to reform their deplorable behaviour.
With that!
All right, fine, charming.
Why'd you do that?
Oh, Run! That was out of order!
Thankfully, help is at hand.
I think it's always good television when you see a kid, beating someone up and knifing someone or being very naughty. But that's the interesting stuff. Most teenagers just get on with it, They're just fairly well behaved, might do a little bit of marijuana every now and again, but nothing more than that. That's most teenagers, really.
Shut up, Mum. Mum, you're a twat, just shut up. You know you defaced just shut up.
There is a large part of the media which does try and demonise teenagers and make them look out as if they're doing all these terrible things, but I think that's a very small majority. There's not many shows which show all the good things that teenagers are doing, and so it is very easy, I think, for people to get the wrong impression.
Natasha.
It must be really frustrating to be a teenager and turn the TV on and see this sort of two-dimensional, image of who you can be, either sort of this pop princess or prince that's, loves fame, or someone that sticks two fingers up to society and gets in trouble with the police all the time, and nothing sort of in between, with young people just trying to contend with being young people.
Coming up, with television demonising teenagers for adult entertainment and the internet fragmenting audiences, is it the end for youth TV? Television has both courted and demonised the youth audience, aware of its spending power but afraid of its raucous energy. If teenagers think TV is patronising them, they won't watch. One show they do watch is Skins.
If you guys want to waste your life watching television...
60% of its audience is aged between 16 and 24, the most fickle television viewers. It's all in the writing.
I was coming up with ideas for television drama, and my son went through them with me and just said they were all rubbish and boring and middle-aged.
I was actually much more polite than that, but he likes to tell it that way. And I just happened to have a short story I wrote when I was 16 with these characters, Sid and Tony and Michelle. And I'd just been bashing them around for years. They'd just always been in my head, and I thought I had a quite good story.
You okay, Anwar? Shut up! I can't pee if you're looking.
What sets Skins apart from any previous teenage drama is its young writing team.
You're looking, aren't you?
Who have an average age of just 22.
I am led primarily by the opinions and decisions of my young writing team, and I follow where they want to walk, and I, like any responsible adult, sometimes point out to them the pitfalls.
Yeah, right, we're 1-1. Right, you get me? This Braham lubed up, man.
There's such a quick turnover of language and stuff like that, so it's quite hard for anyone, even if it is a teenager, to properly get a grasp on what the kids are talking like now.
Right, we've got bare shit on his forehead and thing.
Obviously, there's all this slang and new terms, which sometimes I admit when I was reading the script I was a bit caught out by some of it. But they're obviously, having young writers, they know what's going on.
What's the frequency, Kenneth?
Sorry.
got a bit carried away there. I think you did, man.
There's a kind of honesty about it that I quite like about the scripts. That it's not scared to go there. It's not scared to... And certain people will say, oh, it's a bit controversial. It's not controversial, it's just showing how life is.
The reality of life for teenagers is exactly what worries many adults, and the media have been quick to play on the more sensational aspects of Skins. A growing number of house parties which have resulted in damage have been referred to in the papers as Skins parties. In 2007, a girl in County Durham advertised her party as an unofficial Skins party on MySpace, and this led to over 200 gatecrashers, who caused more than £20,000 of damage. Parents are increasingly worried that Skins might be influencing the behaviour of their teenagers.
The Monkey Man's here!
I don't think the show tries to influence people, but I could see how people might be influenced by it. Watching these teenagers' lives and thinking, you know, that looks quite exciting, and they maybe want to go and try that out. But at the same time, it's not trying to influence, it's just showing. That's the main thing that people say. The main disappointment, apparently, with meeting us generally is that we're not quite as wild as we are in the show.
The dancing is like the best thing in the world, yeah, because it makes you healthy, like, in your body, but it makes your head better too. Will you stay and dance, or just... please?
Okay. It touches areas of kind of the youth experience that we've not seen on television before. It's very, very, very smart modern television.
Skins is more than sex, drugs and swearing. And it kind of pees me off when people say that, because it's like, some of them don't watch the show, they've watched like one episode, or they've watched one extract of it, and they're given an overview of how the whole show is.
You're still a virgin then? Yep.
The success of a show like Skins may be hard to repeat in the future. The internet is increasing the fragmentation of audiences for television, and the young are the least likely group to watch.
Like I say, it's going to be up.
Television and the teenager has been a difficult relationship, but targeting them forced television to innovate and help the kids to grow up.
Youth television was about trying to talk to young people about the world in a way that they would not lose interest in.
It was a mixture of the good and the bad. It took risks that you would never see in TV.
The multiplication is done by a male and a female.
That's absolute crap, and you know it.
I never once thought I'm making a programme here for somebody who's 16 to 24. I felt I want to make something I've never seen on TV before, and I think most people approached it like that, and that was fun.
I'd do anything to be on TV.
Next Saturday from 8, it's the last episode of How TV Changed Britain. Now, for more information about the programmes featured in this series, go to channel4.com/history. Big Brother is next. Get the full lowdown on Dennis and the aftermath of Sylvia's departure.